slowing down. So I've got this like whole series of things I want to communicate, not just in this class, but in 300 words, which won't happen, which is also okay, right? Um, is this idea that in a yoga pose too, things have to be moving at different speeds. So you don't just want slow, right? But in order to realize slow, you have to have things moving at different rates, right? So it's interesting. So and when you think, and of course now this has been such a quilt I'm patching together. I want to go back to some of the things I've learned or I'm processing from the Overstory. And one of the really wonderful thoughts about I think that's in that book throughout is the idea that for whatever reason, human beings have been way caught up in their own story, right? Not the overarching story that the earth provides, but the overstory that is what the earth provides, right? The one that's the big story for life. The earth is the big story of life, right? I mean, right? And there's some wonderful thoughts like that. But how much we get caught up in the human part of the dynamic. And I do that in my life all the time. On all the issues that we have on our political front, and those are important stories, and in personal relationships, those are all part of what's necessary, but things have to be traveling at different speeds. And one of the things that I've been trying to get is that trees are slowed down carbon. Okay, like that they have a different time scale than we do. And they might not even recognize in the way that we understand being recognized. They might not even know we're here because of how slow they move in time, right? That they have a story that stretches out way more. Our story tries to happen really fast. And one of the things that's such a wonderful thought about in Overstory is that without the trees here or plant life here, some of which travels at different speeds, right? I just watched a series of flowers come through my garden and then are gone already. And then there's the perennials, and then there's the trees that come way longer, and then they're old trees, and they're all happening at different rates. But without those different rates, right, that we wouldn't be here. So one of the challenges of the Overstory, for me, has been not to just feel bad, right? To actually not be strong enough to, instead of just feeling bad about our human relationship to the earth, right, and to trees in particular, but to be strong enough to hear their wisdom, as opposed to stop yourself off by just feeling bad. So one of this idea is slower rates of time. One of the things that's happening in centering, and why Patanjali is trying to get the oscillations of the mind, the author of the Yoga Sutras, trying to get the mind to slow down its oscillations, is to actually allow in the possibility of slower time, which for us feels like emptiness, right? It's kind of unfathomable, the way like an 8-hour car ride is for a little kid. So sit up straight and tall. So you're quieting down, so you can have a wider breadth or range for the experience of time, or what it is to be here. So come into a little bit more of alignment in your body, so you're not spilling what's here, so you're not leaking, so you're attempting at congruence. So feel your feet. Remember a tree, right? And the thing about trees is they don't take from the earth somehow. They just take light and water, which is somewhat from the earth, right? And they take CO2, but they don't steal from the soil. hardly at all, unless they're misplanted, right? So feel your feet. You know, a tree that's just a trunk is no longer a tree, right? It's going to have limbs to find the light. It's going to have to take many pathways to the light. That's always trying to live. I don't think that trees feel dread the way we do. And that's their strength. So as you sit up and feel your feet and your sitting bones and feel a little bit more alignment, what's been really important for me the last few weeks has been to let the trees be like, or that part of the earth at that speed be like sentinels, which is also a line in Overstory. A sentinel tree. So I'm trying to listen, feel, create stability, allow for slower time. As I soften the organs of perception around the temples of jaw, the inside of the mouth, relaxing my belly to relax my throat. I want to make sure that I'm letting energy drop down from the base of my neck to my tailbone, down the back body. Otherwise, I'm speeding time up. I'm going to watch the exhalation. Maybe that's today like the leaves dropping in the fall. The inhalation coming after a pause, up through the trunk, out through the limbs. The exhale being part of the whole, the dropping being part of the expression. If you can, bring your hands into prayer and practice symmetry. Remember, a tree is going to have to balance too. But a lot of the balance comes from what's underground, not above ground. So with you. Let go of your day. Prepare your mind to do yoga. Good, and then release. Take the sternum up towards your chin down over your sternum. Where does the leaves meet the branch? Where does the branch meet the trunk? Sternum up, chin drops. Brings attention to the trunk. In the trunk, there's more overt stability. Raise your head up with closed eyes. Open your eyes. It's too easy to think that the spine is just the trunk, right? Remember the the tree is also finding all different ways to get nutrients and to process it. So there's a whole system that is actually in constant exchange with what's around you. So again, sit up straight and tall and use the alignment to clarify the differentiation between where you end and where the empty space begins. So like you're balancing your head over your neck and creates a sense of ease, but you're also trying to tune in to a softer part of the story, which is where you end and the rest of what's outside of you begins. So that sense of boundary is crucial to stability. But a vibrant, don't just think of the boundary, think of where the trunk is in relationship to the boundary. Right? And so you're taking a couple of breaths, knowing where your boundary is without it being a constraint. Right? So don't just try to crash into your boundary. Instead of just thinking about expansion on inhalation, think about it as a massage out into space, right? Stabilized by the spine. The exhale may be a little bit more like dropping leaves, but the dropping, forest teaches you that the trees that fall are crucial to the health of the forest, right? So there's a constant, and I think that inhalation, the spark, the drop of the exhalation mirrors exactly what a forest is doing. It's allowing for the cycle. It's even reflected in your breath. Good, and then release. So the other line I wanted with this idea of things moving at different rates and speeds, and that has happened in yoga practice, which is going to be the theme. I'm also going to read you a line from Leonardo da Vinci, which won't also make it into the freaking greeting because I got too many goddamn thoughts right now. Okay, so, but there's this thing, if you guys are interested in art at all, there's a YouTube channel called Great Art Explained. They're short, like half-hour clips. They're stunning. I've been like, they're amazing. But one was just on the Mona Lisa, which, by the way, I never quite got the Mona Lisa. Like, I don't quite get why there's such a big hoopla until you have somebody point out all the different things that Da Vinci was doing in order to do it. Right? It's unbelievable. But one of the lines he writes, because one of the amazing new techniques that Da Vinci pioneers is the way that the edges dissolve into the background. Okay, and it gets perspective that way. But what they do to make the edges in that painting, and then it becomes like something that we take for granted, transition into the space, the other space around it takes a whole bunch of technique, right? And the line that he writes, which I find it, I'm gonna read it the way he wrote it, and then I like to change one word. He means the eye, this eye. He says the eye never knows the edge of any body. Okay, so he's meaning visually, maybe, but change that EYE with the eye, right? Never knows the edge of any body, right? So as you sit in the space around you and you think you know exactly where, like I'm looking out a window right now, or where the wall is, right? And I think my mind settles itself down by creating something that seems certain, which is that edge, but that edge can never be known by the body or by vision, right? That edge has to be experienced, right? So sit up straight and tall. And so where your edge is in your pose is in constant creation in a yoga pose, right? It's not an act of your will though, right? It's coming into the system. And if one of the really failures of human being is in regards to nonviolence, we don't know our edges very well. And because they're too rigid, we end up being violent to the space around us, right? Because the mind makes it rigid when it doesn't know how to have the edge. Okay? Because the only way the mind can have the edge is actually by quieting itself down, not by an act of will, right? We've utterly missed this truth. Trees haven't. Okay, so sit up straight and tall again. They're looking for the out of the trunk. They're watching for the expansion and extension from the trunk. So instead, before you move your arms, right, find the trunk and try to move from the core out. Your minds are going to get really affected and thinking that your hands are the main expression of your arms. No, the trunk of the arms happens right here. So one way to practice this is if you just, move your head fast. I've done this before, but now, and that's just not the way you do all day long because you're in the wrong pace of time, right? We're not living like trees. We're living in our own human drama. So we turn our heads too fast all the time, right? So anchor in the center of the chest. Now, the anchoring in the center of the chest, have you noticed in order to really do that, don't just put your mind there. That's too fast, right? Drop your shoulder blades and spread them. See the root system of the tree, of the trunk, starting to go outward into space. So as you anchor and put your mind here, broaden between the shoulder blades, drop them down. Watch the lift. So because the tree goes down well, it actually comes up above earth well, above the ground well. So you're actually anchoring. And then from this sense of base, turn your head, right? So you're actually having to slow down. Don't just think about this in terms of precision and all the things you need to control. Think of it as slowing down time, right? So you're anchoring here and then turning. And the anchoring has no end point. So in other words, I can overgrip my shoulders and try to hold too tight. That is not the end point, right? The anchoring goes into the abyss, right? So again, I'm feeling my shoulder blades. Remember, the eye can never know the edge of any body, right? So where my trunk is, like, instead of like trying to hold it too tight, I want to slow down enough and be graceful enough in order to drop the shoulder blades, spread between them, anchor downward into the earth, right? And then I'm going to turn my head and add motion, right? But these first few movements are like branches coming out. They're not like leaves fluttering in the air yet. You're like being, and it's not just you're trying to control everything. You're trying to realize something and then release. Again, moving at different speeds, because once we get into farther into the asana, we're going to be at the leave level, right? Right. So again, anchor again, sit up straight and tall, and make sure the tree's always going to only grow on balance, even though it looks like it's off balance, right? So the relationship between how you're touching the floor, how your sitting bones are hitting the seat, and how the part of the trunk that grows upward, right? You're trying to get all that in order, right? And now I really want you to broaden across. Don't just move your head. Broaden across your collarbones, front and back. And as you do that, notice that grows the roots down as you go horizontal. you go down, and that helps you go up. But now, as you're going across, take an arm out. But did you do it from the trunk? Probably not. I didn't. I was busy talking, right? I'm going to come back in line, try to keep it peaceful, right? What if I actually thought that how I came out of space was important as how I moved into space, right? So I come back and stay connected to my base. Make sure I keep stability. Again, now, even if you can't move your arm, I haven't seen you in a while, Ellen. It seems like I haven't seen you in a while, right? Even if you can't move the other arm, right? Keep the stability. Don't worry about the arm moving so much, Ellen, right? So here you go out. You're trying to have it be an expression from the trunk, from the sitting bones, from the inner heel. And then how I come out of it, I'm trying to keep it quiet, slower, and down. Find the trunk, up. Let the arm come out of the trunk, out. Remember, when I start shifting gravity, I'm handed into the wind, right? And then back and down, up, out. Now we're increasing speed. Don't lose connection. Back, down. Don't think of this as control. Think of it as expression, connected expression. And then up, right? And then down. And then out. And then down. Up. Dang. What's happening up there? Out. Towards the base. Your control is not happening at the elbow joint. And then out. Up. A return to the base. Right? A down. Here it drops like an exhale. And out as an expression from the trunk. A down. Find the trunk again. Shift into gravity. Make it awake again. Don't take your trunk for granted. Right? We do that most of our lives. In a yoga practice, you don't have to. Right? And then back up. So we've been focusing on the arms because I've been trying to slow down time. How are you going to have your legs today? By the way, because if my legs come into my life out of use, I'm never going to have my legs, right? So I got to figure out different ways to find where this edge is. So I'm going to put my hands on my knees. I'm going to like, hey, what the heck? I'm going to use a little bit of pace and rhythm. I'm pulling back on one knee and pushing out. And then I'm doing it the other way. Because now, remember, the eye, if it stays up here, the eye will never know the edge of the body, of any body, including your own. So I'm just bringing in more sensation directly into my trunk, right? So I'm moving and I'm gonna like change gravity again. Because all you're trying to do is bring more into, so the trunk can see the edge, right? I wonder if the trunk knows its fingertips, like its leaves. I wonder about that. So I'm coming forward again because I do this every week. Because the one thing that trees do way better than us is they repeat way better than us, right? They pretty much know their jobs, right? And they do it. And they do it without stealing so much. We're the great stealers, right? The great takers. And then we don't go slow enough to realize what we're taking. Right? And we have this wonderful word called progress, right? Which allows us to not see how much we're taking and at what speed, right? So my legs are going wide again. So again, I'm just trying to find where my edges are. So look what I'm doing. I'm doing all this extra things on balance because I don't want to lose my trunk, right? So I'm grabbing my wheelchair rim, or not rim, foot pedal. I'm pushing down with the other one. I'm pushing down and opening my groin and lifting my chest up away from it, right? So I'm actually coming forward and up, right? And then I'm gonna put my hand on the outside of my knee to show me where the edge is. Then I'm gonna do it on the other side. I had this weekend workshop back, I don't know, 25 years ago, where the yoga, and I'm pushing down, I'm doing all these things I just, right, as I'm talking. And then I'm gonna put the edge back on and touch my knee. Even if you can feel your knee and you don't have a spinal cord injury, you don't quite know where your knee is. The eye will never know the edge. Then I'm gonna do it again the other way. I'm gonna stay patient. Maybe I'll add a little bit more pizzazz into it, right? So now I'm gonna like make it a little bit more like, ooh, put a little bit more like fun flying into this position. So here's me not fun flying, right? Here's me starting to fun fly in my own situation, right? But I remember when I would go the other way and get this kind of fun flying, right? But from my base. So I was in this workshop with the senior yoga teacher, and I touched my knees here again to find out where I am in space. Go back to my trunk, right? The straight line of the trunk. But he had us like do this one pose, which I don't need to explain to you, but it doesn't help the story. But he had us like touch our legs for like 20 straight minutes. The way he taught it, he made us feel stupid. I don't want you to feel stupid. So, but reach under your leg if you can, right? And try to pull the flesh from behind your leg up, right? So I'm not just lifting my leg, I'm pulling the flesh out. And if you get a little closer to your buttocks, it's even going to be even more helpful for your trunk, right? So you're pulling that out. Then you're going to do it the other way. So I'm going to have to get underneath here this other way, and I'm just pulling it out. I'm putting sensation where there wasn't, right? The parts, the things I missed because I'm going too fast, right? So I'm just gonna do this back and forth. And so what I realized, and I felt like when we were doing that class, that he was making us like touch our legs like they were Play-Doh and trying to form them, right? And then you know, put your hands on your knees, make the trunk centered again, right? Take them wide again. Again, I'm just gonna do it both like this for a second, right? Just try to get this idea of movement here, out, right? Through because when you sit in a chair a lot, you don't get this action very much. Then I'm gonna lean over and put some fun in it, right? But what I realized is when he had me like keep touching the edges of where the eye thought my body was, something changed about the edge. Also, something changed about the trunk. So again, we're just trying to like use this idea of tactile sensation to be able to have an experience of the edge that takes less mental judgment. So again, I'm back underneath here, I'm pulling this out, moving it over, and then going the other way. So I'm trying to have the edge become experiential, not seen, right? And then back to the core. So then as you sit here and go to quiet and now slow down time again, can you recognize a different kind of hum? A different sense of your container? So one of the ways to amplify the hum we've done it more from the outer body more, is to actually start moving the spine more. But I'm hoping you can now, from all this tactile touching the Play-Doh of your body, right? By realizing the edge more where you've touched, that it actually opens you to what's outside of the edge. While the trunk stays grounded, stays stable. So and then I'm going to mark it with my breath. Right? Remember, your breath has the spark of life, the pause, in other words, the ceasing, the drop of life, and a pause, and a re-beginning again. So it's got the whole cycle of existence in it, right? So you're inhaling, sparking and growing. There's that pause, those couple days before the leaves start falling. Then it washes out. There's a pause, the ceasing again, before the inhale. And remember, the forest integrates the dropping of its trees into the cycle of life, into its intelligence. Good, and then release. And apparently that's really hard for human beings to do, is remember that damn line we've all grown up with: those that don't study history are doomed to repeat it, right? So now we're gonna start moving the spine again, right? But in order to like take in past time, you have to slow down, right? And then forward. So we're just gonna, and go back. The hum will start to get more apparent and I'm pulling on my legs, right? I'm using tactile. I'm using my whole body to start feeling this movement, right? So this is my outer body guiding my spine, right? So I'm shifting gravity, and then as I'm forward, then I lift my spine and move it back, and then go back and over the spine, right? But now, can I be patient enough, sit up straight and tall, to do the same movement without moving my outer body very much, but actually moving my spine? So I'm gonna back bend like I'm down here and coming up, right? I'm gonna do it in a smaller space. Then I'm gonna go back. And then I'm gonna convex, pardon me. And then I'm gonna come back through. And for me, I'm creating stability and receptivity by touching my hands together, right? So I'm finding my trunk, but I'm going back and forth this cycle, which might be called like cat-cow, right? It's way more than cat-cow, right? So I'm going back and forth in this cycle. So I'm trying to get near the trunk. I'm trying to get the movement of life, right? How is it the trees look the same every day to our time scale, but they're constantly changing, right? They're also constantly inviting. Take your legs wide. Remember, a tree will never tell you not to join it, right? Completely open with what it is. It's completely accessible to you. It won't deny you access. It's stunning, right? So I'm sitting up tall again, right? And so now I'm going to try to find the trunk, and I'm going to lean over, keeping aware of the trunk, and then take the arm up. So I'm thinking about limbs coming out of the trunk, right? One of the things I'm so amazed at by trees, and then come back, is that the trees don't always grow out symmetrically, right? I might have one go out at one height and one go out at another. And then they grow to where they somehow recreate a different balance, right? So we're moving one arm at a time. But I want you to be aware, like I'm finding the points of expansion, touching them. So for those of you that can do this and also ground your feet, right? Find this up through the chest and then out, right? So now my limbs are expressing more of my trunk as opposed to extorting from my trunk or exploiting it. So I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to find, right? If you can touch your feet down, touch your feet down. Extend, open. So now energy's coming out my knees. It's going down to the earth. It's coming out my fingertips. It's coming out this back shoulder straight out, right? Good. And then back. Come forward. So I'm actually putting my hands on my I got an advantage over someone that don't sit in a wheelchair. I put my hands on my foot, right? But I want my spine to come through gravity while my knees are farther apart, right? So whatever you need to do that. And then I'm going to come back, and as I do that again, I'm going to want my sacrum, each side of my sacrum, the triangle-shaped bone, to point out to each knee as I'm coming forward. And as soon as I try to extend my sacrum out to each knee, I hope you can tell that your chest is, right? Because the sacrum and the sternum are related. What's below the ground of a tree connects to what's above the ground. Good, and then release. And then back to touch up more simply to my base, my trunk. Symmetry to find the core channel. I live on a bunch of maples, a lot of maples. Never wanted to tap them for their sugar, right? I feel like punching holes in them seems kind of mean, right? But damn, it tastes good. But it takes a lot of time too. So I'm going to open up and I'm going to go even farther back, right? So I'm going to make sure my trunk is staying tactile. See, look how I'm leaning here. I'm grabbing here. I'm opening here. I'm lengthening through the trunk while I'm rotating. There are things that are moving at different speeds, right? Right here. My outer body is moving faster than the lengthening and dropping of my spine. I'm having to grab, I'm having to move faster out in space, but there's a slower time creating stability in my spine. And then I'm going to come out of it like it matters. Unlock here, ground here, open here, find the center again. So I stayed, you ever had any kind of massage or body work? The really good ones never stop touching you even as they walk around the table. Right? So now I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to ground, I'm going to grab, I'm going to open. I'm going to have to do all these things. On this side's always more of a struggle for me. So already the requirements of my outer body and speed robbed from my base. So I'm going to try it again because I can do better. I know I can do better than that. I'm going to try to keep the inside part in my spine better, down. So all these moves make sense. Grab, ground, open. So the outer body, I'm trying to keep more aware of the slower speed of my spine. And then I'm going to revolve, knowing that my will has to make things move faster, but my stability depends on a slower speed in my spine. And in these multi-levels of velocity, I breathe. Good. And then come on back to center. So I don't know about you, but I can tell one side I twisted differently than the other. And so one of them, I didn't get as deep and as happy in. So I'm going to come forward right now and try to level that out by lengthening my spine. So I'm going to come forward, lean on the table or lean on your legs, and I'm going to lengthen my back. And so if you know the side that didn't get as twisted as well, open the opposite side. So for me, it's always the right side of my spine and rib cage. So I'm sitting here grounding my feet, my arms leaning forward, hitting down through my sitting bones, extending up through my spine, and then paying a little extra attention to the left side of my spine. That's on the left side of my back, low down, because that's the part that didn't get as happy, because the opposite side, the right side of my low back, did not twist as well. Right? So the consequence is paid by the left side of my back, because the right side of my back wasn't able to get as far into the pose. Consequences of not getting equal time flow and effort flow is paid in different places. So I'm taking a few breaths. Good, and then come back into, so it's too easy, for me at least, in my appreciation of trees, right, is to make some moral judgment, like, damn it, they're just better at being nonviolent, right, than we are. And I can actually feel bad about that if I want. It's true. They don't take as much. They don't steal as much, for sure. They're not as violent. They fall, they hit each other, but then they give each other's death into their other's life, right? So they're not as violent, right? But then, or I can just feel bad about that, or I can start to figure out, why aren't they as violent? What is it they know about their trunk? About how time flows? About patience? So I'm sitting up straight and tall, thinking about, feeling all that, not even thinking about it. Feeling like I overworked in my back. I'm actually taking time, not just to process with my mind, but to feel with my whole body what's occurred. Then I'm going to come forward because I want to get the back more happening, right? So you guys can go with more energy, and then back, right? And then come forward. So we're doing this movement of the spine, and then back up with one arm. Holy crap, is that arm sore, right? And then come forward, and I'm coming back. And I'm making the whole thing, my limbs and my trunk moving simultaneous, back forward, because the trunk does move in the wind, right? So I'm going up, right? Going back. Now, if I really want to do the other side to balance it out, up, back. Now, if I really want to exploit my trunk, my spine, I could try to do this with both arms, right? Especially if I need to satiate the fact that you all can do it better than I can, right? I wonder, I can do it. So I can't come front. If I'm leaning forward, I can't come back and have both my arms over my head. So I have to push off. And then at a certain point, I got to figure out when the transition should happen. So I'm gonna show you what I have to do to get both my arms involved. So I'm down here. I've got my hands on my thighs. I'm pushing. There's a point of crucial transition where I'm the most weak and fragile. It's right here as I shift, right? So I got to find that spot. I'm going to come back through it again. I'm going to find that spot where the gravity starts to turn. Once I find it, I can't take both arms up. If I want to take both arms up at a time, I have to go around it up. I can't do that with both arms, right? So I'm having to go around and up and rack back here where I think I'm doing more yoga. God, there's way more strain in my neck. This does not feel as good, but damn it, I'm satisfying the eye. It tries to think it knows the edges and then comes forward and then goes back. I'm going to try it one more with both arms again. I'm going to do the switch. I'm going to open, take both arms up as smoothly as I can. Come forward, And then because I actually know which one I crave more, I'm going to do the same thing one arm at a time again. I'm going to come forward. I'm going to keep my trunk in line. I'm going to go back. Damn, this feels like more yoga. So now I got a whole bunch of possibilities. My arm can go up. So my right arm is, I'll call my left arm up, my right knee pushing forward. So I'm going in opposite directions. I'm going to come back, right? I'm going to come forward. I'm going to go up with the opposite arm, forward with the opposite knee, right? Damn, you mean I get to move in union if I just slow it down? Yeah. Holy crimes. Happy about that, right? I'm happy about the diversity, about the different speeds. Good, and then I'm going to come back into center again. So I got to readjust because my tendency is to get unequal on my sitting bones. So between poses to come back to my trunk, I'm always adjusting, right? I'm always trying to use movement to show me the edges, not just project from the eye, right? Remember the exhale being like the dropping of the leaves. But the dropping actually lengthens the trunk skyward. I've got a tree that split down the middle from a windstorm last summer, and I didn't cut it down. And I'm watching it struggle with its own hollowness, right? It's got a couple of dead branches above it that I should trim off. The thing that makes me feel like I could cut it down is that it could crash into my neighbor's house. They can't see where it's ripped open, so I know the thing that I'm doing, but it's their house. That it probably wouldn't hit their house, but part of me thinks I have to cut it down. For sure have to tend to it. Tend to your trunk right now. Find where your edges are. Knowing that your mind will never know where your edges are. That's why people struggle with boundaries psychologically so much. Minds don't know edges. Eyes don't know edges. Smile because I think Leonardo da Vinci, with that line that he wrote that I saw on the screen 500, 600 years later, felt like a whisper right into my ear. All right, and then prepare. So I'm practicing symmetry. I hope you are too. Symmetry is part of knowing where the trunk is for the mind. Remember, you don't have to know the poses. You have to be able to do the poses. And then prepare for Shavasana. So now I've got to go into a different mode. I have to receive more. So in order to really let in the support of my wheelchair, I have to really let go. I'm met by my chair. Right? There's a dropping and a rising that then meets at that place. That I have to let it distribute as relief from the trunk to my limbs, to the leaves, to my fingertips. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. If not, try to let in the light equally. Feel your breath. Notice its whole cycle. The movement, the pause, the movement again, the rise, the fall. Start to bring yourself back, slightly deeper inhalation, slightly longer exhalation. When you're ready, and if you've closed your eyes, open your eyes slowly. Close them again if you have to. Open them again, but as an expression of your trunk. Isn't that funny? I just had this thought just now. Isn't that funny that totem poles typically happen up the trunk, right? As if the trunk, the core of stability, has the eyes, right? And that's kind of a cool, probably not coincidence. One of the things that I think is really hard, especially when you're living with chronic pain or in the uncertainty of things, is that we're actually more stable when you allow for more, right? But your mind's not more stable when you allow for more, because your mind thinks it's got to do something with the more, right? And it's like, no, actually. And that's part of the thing that the yoga practice has taught me, has been that the more I'm here and the more I can allow different rates of speed, and not thinking that being slower is always best. It's not always best, right? Sometimes it's not best. But if I can have the full diversity of speeds, of different velocities, then life thrives, right? And that's a lesson. And it's been embodied by nature. All right, hands together. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you.